Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to the new and improved video game news. Well, back would probably be the wrong term there. Today I am trying out the new and improved video game news. And let's just make an adjustment there, and see if this is all going to kick in and actually work, because that's also certainly a question. I spent the weekend overexerting myself. I used to use the phrase killing myself, but I guess YouTube censorship of unaliving and things like that are sneaking in. Plus, frankly, even when I would use those phrases, it would be amongst too mixed of company of as far as people who get it and people who don't get that I'm joking. But yeah, overexerting myself, moving the comically too large 65-inch TV off of the TV monitor mount and unboxing after it's sitting around in a box for about a year. My 43-inch 2x2 grid of 1080p 4K monitor, which is still really a TV, but it takes 4 HDMI inputs or DVI or USB-C input to then, in certain picture-by-picture modes, split things to be a for 1080p inputs. Sorry. Yeah. I'm looking at YouTube's Shorts live stream squeezing, and it's still not quite right at this moment. Like, I feel like I would have to do something like this to get everything onto the screen, and yeah, so there's still a lot of room, as I've been doing lots of experiments to get up to this point and abandoned most of them in favor of the system I'm using now, but I still may need a Violent Monkey script that just turns all of the web pages to have a fairly large margin on the left and right sides. Meanwhile, anybody who's watching horizontally is just getting tons of black bars on the left and right sides on top of empty space that would actually be on the web page. Because yeah, this is definitely a different design. It's not a design I'm embracing for making pre-recorded footage, but for websites which infinitely scroll downward, it does just make some sense to go to vertical. But also, this vertical is not really the vertical I was shooting for. I was shooting for a 1080p image rotated 90 degrees. So instead of 1920 by 1080, it would be 1080 by 1920. What I ended up having to do with the setup is effectively have two 1080p images stacked on top of each other. So it's still 1920, but it's now 2160. And so that's what I'm recording at and uploading. And uploading the videos, as I did in some test videos, seemed to be okay. But the aspect of streaming is going to be weird. And see, it's almost the case that just nobody is going to be happy about any of the settings here. And see, even at 100%, I would say that's still not quite enough. So I really would have to bring it down to maybe 90% on this page in particular. But yeah, over the weekend, it was just a lot of moving heavy TVs. Managed to scrape up my knees, and I thought about making a very comedic cunnilingus joke there to get my TV set up that I scraped my knees, which is technically true, but yeah, I figured I would avoid being that crass. What really happened is the 65-inch TV is on a TV stand. The TV stand has some wooden shelves. As I tilted the TV stand onto a bed, or my bed, yeah, the back side of the stand pivoted and scraped right against my knees as I was being very careful not to just flop the TV face down on its glass screen on the bed. And then I took off the mounting brackets because it has a almost like wall hang. It's basically a wall hang mounting bracket system. And then I looked at my new TV, and these LG TVs, or at least the one I have, has an inset monitor VESA mount. So I cannot get the wall brackets alone to fit the, I assume, M6 screws that go into it that come with any bracket system are probably going to be 35 millimeter. With it being inset, I'm going to need 60 millimeter or longer, and a lot of spacers in the middle there, so it makes good tight contact. So I've had to order some more bolts, not screws. M6 times 60, 75, 80, 90. There was a whole set, so a variety of M6 bolts. Hopefully they are M's and not M5s or M4s or M7s. So yeah, that's the resolution squeeze that is now working, is 90% of what it was. So yeah, I almost have it right, but not quite right still. But yeah, so right now I have the TV just sitting on one of the shelves, which is fine. It's not going to break the shelf, I'm pretty sure. But the legs on my new TV are very wide apart, and I don't know why TVs do this. They should always put the legs much more inset, and the shelf itself is just not that wide, so the legs are just hanging off the edges, so it is pivoting really on the middle power button more than anything, and tilted precariously against the wall, so any slight kick and this whole TV might slide down. So I definitely need to mount it. 43 inches is way more realistic 4K resolution and just a newer TV in general compared to my 65-inch, which is probably a 15-year-old TV. I mean, it has a PC hookup that's an RGB connection. It doesn't even have DVI to show just how old it is, and they haven't used the serial RGB connections or VGA. Yeah, they're called VGA connections, aren't they? Probably in 15 years. Still playing a little Memento Mori. Everything's kind of wrapping up because Christmas is just a couple days away. I got groceries. And yeah, still playing Pokemon TCG Pocket, and still playing Madoka Magica, which Madoka Magica came out with an update that felt like it was adding 4 or 5 things and rushing. Potentially it felt like they are releasing 2, maybe even 3 years of planned Christmas content all at once now, because I think even they are starting to get desperate to realize that the game is just not that well successful. I spent a lot of time on Sunday shopping the Steam Winter Sale. Got it down to $200 or so worth of games, and one of the games I got was Vampire Survivors, and so I was able to make a test viewing, a test recording of a couple of episodes of Vampire Survivors. So that is what I'm playing there. Vampire Survivors so far is surprisingly one-handed in its control. All you do is move the left analog stick on the controller. You don't press A, B, X, Y at all, and it's kind of surprising that those buttons aren't then being remapped to be like a D-pad. And yeah, it just feels like it's gonna be a case where you're gonna have to grind a little bit before you start getting to real progress. But yeah, my whole setup now is changed, and I'm just adapting to it. I've changed buttons I press to start recording. My chair is 180 degrees. I have a different monitor. At some point I'm going to split the monitor's signal on one of the HDMI signals so that I can use the full 4K monitor, 43 inches, to play games like Vampire Survivors, which is way overkill for that specific game, while still monitoring recording with another monitor, smaller monitor. But at that is where I'm going to limit myself. I'm moving to technically 5 monitors, but the 5th is going to be shared input, and 4 of those monitors are really just one monitor. Windows is very weird as far as how this LG TV works, in that it really does want to change the resolution depending on whether you split it vertically, whether you split it horizontally. It doesn't just want to report to Windows that it's 1080p always, which is nice but can be somewhat confusing. Let's scroll down the 24-hour peak concurrent chart. You'd think that the numbers here today might be somewhat interesting, but it kind of isn't. Yeah. And inherently everything I'm doing with Windows as far as the monitor setups are probably just going to get replaced when I move the Bakelite Linux, which I assume KDE it will be a tiling desktop environment, and I'll just be able to program Windows to be in specific spots always, instead of having to have a monitor handle it for you. And yeah, since this monitor is not available anymore, you probably would just buy a really good 4K monitor, whatever you pick, and then buy a fairly expensive Matrix machine. There is one layout here that I'm kind of peeved it doesn't let me do, in that on my left side of the monitor is only one input, which is just like my primary input, whereas on the right side is also only one input, but at a higher resolution, so it takes up the entirety of the screen. I would like to be able to have 2 1080p images on the left side, and then one 1920 by 2160 image on the right side for a 3 input setup, and there just isn't anything like that as far as an option. And I don't know how you really would do that, because they don't really make mergers where you can take 2 1080p images and then merge it into one 1080p by 2160, which that resolution definitely is weird. Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely wait until I start being able, until I build a new computer, to see if I can actually record two completely different types of footage. So, yeah. At the moment, the suggestion for anybody watching on widescreen is to rotate your phone if you can and go to vertical, or if you can't rotate the image, then unfortunately you're just going to have to live with it, because yeah, there's no way to really improve that. I also finally uploaded all the thumbnails for Fallout New Vegas the second time. Apparently you have to just sit there and wait after clicking the save button a couple of seconds, and I was moving too fast for the website the first time, is basically my guess as to what happened there, because it was showing the thumbnails, then the thumbnails disappeared after I reloaded the page. And yeah, I need to schedule videos desperately. I've probably been saying that for months, and I need to definitely work on some other stuff to make things actually work the way I want them to work. Sorry, I'm looking at the web pages. All my web pages also had Violent Monkey disabled, so there is a decent argument to reloading every single one before we look at it. Yeah, I'm looking at the most wishlisted page, and I'm noticing here that's still not quite what I would want, and it's just going to be cut off in the vertical stream. So yeah, right now the uploaded version of this video will look fine. The live stream, dual streaming that YouTube is creating for YouTube Shorts will look awful, and the widescreen version that is live streaming will look awful. So yeah, you really are mutilating the image one way or the other. And for a page like this, since so many pages like dynamically adjust themselves, I am going to have to squeeze in the margins some way to get something like this to actually look good. Because right now, the widescreen is getting just like the last couple of letters of Subnautica 2 here, and then it goes maybe to the followers spot, or maybe all the way to the right. Yep. See, there's just more work that needs to be done. Always more work that needs to be done. So during the winter sale, I looked around and went through my wish list and basically did a wish list cleanup. There was several games that actually had been removed from Steam, which is, yeah, a little shocking when you see that some games have been removed from Steam. But honestly, the highest amount of games that have been removed from Steam are things that are getting removed by big publishers, and as such they are getting replaced a lot of times with remastered versions. And this time shopping, I saw a lot of prompts saying you could get this game cheaper in a bundle, and so that seems like that's a new thing on Steam, where they're suggesting you buy the bundle and save money. Now, inherently, what they're saying is that the individual game you're trying to buy will be cheaper in a bundle. That doesn't inherently mean that the total amount spent will be lower, because if you're buying a bundle of 2 games, you probably overall are spending more money, unless you already own the other game, in which case, which is often the case for me, and at that point then you are saving money. I got a bunch more Disney games. But yeah, that is, I think, for the most part, all I got. Tried to pick more games that I'm actually interested in, think I might actually play in the next year. Star Trek Bridge Crew, I think, went to becoming exclusive on the Epic Games Store, and so it's no longer available on Steam, and that sucks. There's still plenty of games that also just do not like have any discounts. Many of the old Star Trek games are like that, and they're just really overpriced. Or even if they are on sale, they're still overpriced. And so yeah, I had gotten it up to $400, and in that it was, yeah, I think I'd have to go this small, and this is just like way too small to actually read. So yeah, I had gotten it up to $400 as far as recording and streaming. Speaking of recording, I should just double check OBS is doing okay. Yeah, it looks fine. That's not what I meant to do. One game that popped up that I find surprising here is Doom Eternal: The Ancient Gods Part 2 here. Is very mixed reviewed, and while I was doing the wishlist cleanup, that surprised me quite a bit. Let's see if maybe The Ancient Gods Part 1 is any better. No, it's also mixed reviewed. So yeah, while people love the base game of Doom Eternal, they were seemingly very unhappy with the DLC. Yeah. Now 100%, this is not super readable. It definitely is the case that Windows wants to bring up the dots per inch on a lot of this stuff and just make things bigger. Even wearing my glasses, it is fairly difficult to read this, even 3.5 feet away. Yeah. Again, a higher resolution screen that's not going to change up the dots per inch is going to still not solve my vision issues. Although, is it really that abnormal when Windows is telling you to bring it up to 125% dots per inch or 150% or higher? Like, isn't that really just Windows admitting that at higher resolutions most people cannot read the text on the screen? So I may very well be in line with most people. Although, also, I imagine Windows might become more and more accessible as its audience becomes older and older as far as people using Windows. Which is a little surprising that Windows isn't just targeting a fairly old audience. To say that this is Mac OS and Apple is where the cool kids went, and Windows is where all the grandmas and grandpas are. And so we're going to make things easy, and we're going to make things easy to read. Yeah, and this just looks absolutely awful on the dual stream. Of the three formats here, the dual stream is the one to ignore completely, because it is the one that if I tried to adapt for, which is the one I'd like to adapt for, it's going to be the one that's a nightmare scenario overall. Yeah. And I might be wrong here on how I'm doing this overall. And there might be a different resolution. It's actually very hard in OBS without doing it in an overly CPU intensive way to get any of these scenes to just absolutely crop, because that's what I'm really would want it to do. Is I'd want it to take just the first 1920 by 1080 pixels and show that, and just ignore the bottom 1080p screen completely. But it doesn't quite work that way. Let's say, yeah. So, it being Christmas, I imagine there isn't a ton of video game news. The one big thing I've heard is that the Game Indie Awards, I believe is the name of it, stripped Clair Obscur Expedition 33 of Game of the Year title because they used AI in conceptual development, is what it's being described as, but AI, they're claiming, isn't really in the final product, which I think inherently, if a stand is going to be made, a stand is going to have to be fairly rigid. That being said, then they passed the Game of the Year award to Blueprints, and allegedly Blueprints also used AI in some way. So it's maybe a little inconsistent. I could straight up see the argument of an argument being made that Clair Obscur Expedition 33 just got too many awards, and thus we need to hand out some other awards to balance it out, particularly video game awards. I could see where maybe the indie game awards need to happen a little bit later than the video game awards if they were going to try and create that balance. But inherently the whole idea is pretty dumb to strip any game of an award or anything of an award once you've given it. You should instead just give out new awards or more awards. It would be a completely different statement to say we've decided that Blueprints also deserves Game of the Year, and we've come out with that, but clearly they want to send the message that they're anti-AI, which, fair enough, but then you really would have to find somebody that can guarantee nothing they made was AI, or used AI at any point in the whole process. Which, again, I would want to be more positive, and I would probably want to just give an award out to artists specifically in that case. If that's what you're going to do, it would be a lot easier to say, hey, we want to give awards to actually named artists in the credits of the games, and then build up those people and make it seem as much as possible that they are very talented and that they don't need AI and that they can't be replaced with AI. Of course, these video game awards really don't mean anything at all, so Indie Game Awards in particular were an event I completely missed, did not see any news about at all. So yeah. There was also news about this console, Kinect-like console, that I looked more into it. I did see a few other sites other than Video Game News talk about it, so it's not just Video Game News talking about some random console. The whole thing is like $250 with a subscription though, and it's far too expensive. But I can see why it's sold well, because $250 is still a lot cheaper than the price of a Switch 2 or the price of an Xbox or a PlayStation. But yeah, what you're getting in it is very much for very young kids, and I don't think a subscription model makes the best sense there either. They're really just hiding the price and making it seem cheaper than it really is. So yeah, there's some talk there as far as that game console, but seeing the really seeing the process. There's another page that it would be hard to get it down to the right format. Yeah, I've really gone full circle on that aspect too, is that the input is 1920 by 2160. The output probably needs to be shrunk and stretched to much smaller than that, so that there is some filler both on the left and right side to make some other format work. There might be a rescaling issue that could happen when streaming in particular. Maybe that would fix it too. Yeah, and it's crazy. You just have to take into consideration the input and the output, and I'm trying to scale things and not just stretch and squash things so it's still readable. Or ideally you want to crop things and you don't want to stretch things. You can scale things if you can scale things, but there are no real subpixels happening here, so if it doesn't evenly divide by 4 as far as the resolution goes, you're not getting that full experience. So yeah, I mentioned I'm still playing some mobile games, wasting a decent amount of time on that. We'll have all of our charts reset when it hits January 1st. Yeah, January is going to be a tough month, I think, financially for a lot of people, including me, because I definitely have overspent on Steam Winter sales and Black Friday sales and other things just barely on sale. Way too much on Lego. Yeah. And yeah, there's way too much things overall. And so now I'm going to engage in the annual tradition of playing poor or being poor for the first quarter of the next year, January, February, March, April. We'll get new hardware. Here we can show off my chart, even though I'm not going to be doing anything with this chart. But you can see again how much better this chart looks on vertical resolution. Just how much better detail you can get looking at this than when it's widescreen. Yep. Still playing Balatro, and even though I've marked this game as private, I'm not sure if it's going to change how the recently played looks to me. Yeah, very quickly, I got a decent amount of achievements, but there are 243 in total. And yeah, I imagine Vampire Survivors is just going to be a pretty grindy game in the same way Balatro is a pretty grindy game. There is crossover DLC for Vampire Survivors that includes Balatro. Probably should make this game private also, just because if I am running this, I'm not really playing it. I'm hoping that next year's replay is a little bit more accurate because of that, but the Steam replay may include private games too. As far as the wishlist goes, I probably only bought about 20 games, so I think there's probably still close to 6,000 games there. Trying to see if we can get a list of all games. And yeah, there isn't anything, any order here that you can see for new games bought. I got Danganronpa 2 and the spin-off game, so we can move down in that direction. I got the newest Monkey Island game, got some more Disney games. There's only a couple Lego games. It's like Lego 4K Drive and Lego Horizon Zero Dawn, which are both mixed reviewed. They're the only Lego games. Could have gotten the Dead Space reboot game, but I just don't really see a reason to even play that when it's fairly obvious that they are not going to remake Dead Space 2 or 3 or continue with that series. I definitely was trying to get things that would go down the path of logical progress of things I've already covered. This is an interesting chart because it's sorted by playtime. It shows just what games I either left running the most or what games I actually spent a ton of time in. And you'd think Cracking the Cryptic would be way higher than some of these games, but apparently not. Although it may just be a case that having actual fun makes it a lot easier to go through things. There was a Shantae game I thought about getting, the Seven Silence game, I believe is its name, but I passed on it because discounts are still just high. Went through every single game and made sure that there was a discount on it that was the highest discount, and just kind of checked how old the game is, because like Blueprints, for instance, which I don't think I got, is probably going to go on a deeper discount in a year. Burnhouse Lane, the sequel I think to Lorelei, was one I considered. When considering that, there was a whole another game that the creator of the Cat Lady series has announced. I didn't even see Jonathan Blow's new game listed. I don't know if it's out yet. I have too many Resident Evil games. I need to play a couple before buying any more. I think I got a No More Heroes game spin-off, which I probably won't play too much of. I got another Darksiders Genesis. Was the Darksiders game I got. But yeah, there's more than enough nowadays to finish and continue series. I got Trine 3. There was a Star Wars game. I don't think Dirt 3 is listed anymore, and that's why the image is missing there. Yeah, I probably have more than enough of games to continue down the path of games I've been playing over the past couple of years, which is all that chart is really showing us. Let's see. Dioka. So I'm gonna open. It's opening as a new tab. So yeah, this is the new game. It's already on my follow list. So yeah, there's I should be set as far as playing games. I definitely am still not done with cleaning, decluttering, and just organizing my house, which there's still a ton of work to be done there. And only so much of it I can do before I need to take a physical break from all the physical activity. There was hope that that would have been done by January of last year. And yeah, there's an actual cost associated with just having a house dirty, in that I could be doing something better with the square footage. Winter sale still goes through January 5th, but I doubt I will buy anything more. I've watched the first episode of Season 2 of Fallout 76, and I watched a YouTuber recap Fallout New Vegas. It is perhaps going to be a full admission that Felicia Day is no longer acting, and that she was the face and the voice of one of the companion characters in Fallout New Vegas, and there's really no reason why she couldn't come back and be the face and the voice of that same character, particularly since apparently the timeline sets the events of the TV show to be about 15 years after the events of New Vegas, which I don't know if the TV show really cares about any consistency with the timeline. It almost certainly doesn't. But yeah, there's a ton of DLC also for Vampire Survivors. I'll have to see if I actually enjoy Vampire Survivors enough that I'd really want to get to DLC. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in side quests in the Fallout TV series that they may very well just not really engage with at all. It may very well just be a straightforward experience. It is interesting seeing how Megabonk can do what Vampire Survivors is doing, but do it faster and with more enemies on screen in 3D. Just to see the level of optimization that can really happen there. And yeah, as long as the sale is going, it does seem like they're pushing people towards the top sellers page instead of the popular new releases. It's not like there's something specifically under these popular new releases that's really objectionable. Although I don't know why Octopath Traveler 0 here is not loading. I guess the most objectionable thing here might be Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Yeah. And almost certainly nothing has really changed as far as upcoming games or trending free games. I did look through my wish list as I was doing the wish list cleanup to a lot of the small handful really of adult games that are on my wish list, and for what's there, I think it's probably fine to keep them there, but I definitely don't know if I would actually ever be able to purchase and play them, because inherently it would just be a big time commitment to play a game that I then couldn't really even talk about. And see, it's interesting that some of these games that I already own are getting recommended, so the recommendation engine I think is getting worse, because yeah, I definitely own that, and buying it a second time doesn't make a lot of sense because I don't think they really have the co-op in it perfect yet. Plus I don't have anyone I'd really play co-op with it. I do feel like overall we may be getting less DLC in games, but still are getting some DLC. I totally own Balatro, so yeah. Look at this, Slay the Spire being recommended, Slay the Spire being recommended. It's just going around in circles, so I don't think their servers are running particularly well as far as the front page recommendations. Things are on the wish list, things are on the follow list. Yeah. Yeah. The Steam Decks are not available in refurbed form, and I guess we could see if maybe there's something interesting. Yeah. This page looks very different at this size now. It's not until you get to this resolution that it really starts to squeeze. So yeah, the 256 LCDs, even new, are out of stock on Steam. So you really are being pushed that if you are going to buy a Steam Deck now, it would have to be a 512 gigabyte, $550 console. Brand new OLED version. Yeah. I think we've hit the wall where there won't be any more 256 LCDs units, and the prices are just going to be higher for everything. Let's see. Yeah. This is one of the ones where things might be a little bit more in the center. Yeah. It is kind of crazy though that vertical streaming, the way YouTube's dual streaming is going, doesn't seem to really account for the fact that you are vertical streaming at different ratios. Because I obviously am vertical streaming, I'm just not streaming at a 9:16 ratio, which is what I assume it is going for. Yeah, I definitely am open to feedback. If I have way more people who say, hey, these live streams don't make any sense being vertical, let me know. But they kind of make sense to me. Like the infinite scroll aspect of web pages does just feel like you're getting more on the screen faster for a longer amount of time. It definitely makes sense reading it to have this infinite scroll. And that's, I guess, all I can really say about that. Alright, now it's going to bring us to Video Games Chronicle News. And yeah, I'm still trying to also adjust my chair cushion. I had a really firm cushion under it, and it was hurting, and it didn't feel like the cushion was doing as much as it should. And now I have a softer cushion under it, and still it's hurting. Yep. I think the problem is more my backside than the chair. Hopefully that issue figures itself out and fixes itself. I left the alternating pressure pad on my mattress on, so might be making extra noise too. Apologies for that. I'm gonna probably have to put that on a smart switch so I can turn it off from across the room. But yeah, I imagine this week is going to be a fairly slow one. I'm just going to be waiting for packages, waiting to see if anybody decides to swing by for Christmas, which there isn't a great chance that will happen. And then just playing Vampire Survivors. I want to schedule more videos. I want to start making YouTube shorts. I want to make a system where YouTube shorts automatically create themselves and upload themselves after every stream, so that whole process just becomes very fast and very quick as to how it goes, and there's would just be no backlog, no scheduling there. It then would certainly help. For some reason, some of my YouTube shorts are coming out again. I must have scheduled a few. But yeah, Video Games Chronicle articles. Going to have to reload everything so it actually looks good. So here's the story. I talked about Claire Obscure Expedition 33 Game of the Year award pulled after admitting to generative AI use. Indie Game Awards retracts Expedition 33 wins due to a no-gen AI stance. Yeah, which then they give it to Blueprints and Sorry We're Closed. They have a hard stance against Gen AI in video games. It's something we talk about throughout the year when discussing any potential nominees. On the day of the premiere, Sandfall Interactive did in fact confirm that AI generated was used in the making of Expedition 33. So yeah, this is one of those examples also though where I think the people getting punished are the ones that are admitting to using AI, where the people not admitting to use AI are not getting punished. And this is a blue sky image, and you can see how it's definitely not taking up the totality of the screen. But a lot of my custom CSS that I just set up very possibly is going to now have to be tweaked. Um, although, idealistically, none of it, only a little bit needs to be tweaked, and then the rest of it will be scaled and shrunk down. But yeah, I may come off as knowing more about OBS than I really do as far as how to use it. But yeah, there are still many aspects of it that I may be using in a weird way or using completely wrongly. Moving on, the next of 4 video game news articles, Video Game Chronicle article, is after originally being revealed in 2020, ARC 2 has been delayed again to 2028. So 8 years theoretically in development. Honestly, I'm not sure how in development it really has been in development. But yeah. By the time it comes out, it's just going to feel like it is basically the next generation remaster of ARC 1, which some of these games work better that way, where you make one game, it sells pretty well, it's pretty popular, then you wait 10 years, and then on the 10th anniversary you come out with a sequel that can far surpass it. Of course, at the moment, with what is looking like a 5-year or longer stagnation that's going to happen in computer technology, 10 years from now, computers may not be much more profitable, may not be much more, what's the right word? Performant, I guess. And so a game that could be played now may look exactly the same as a game 10 years from now, which that's in the long run probably a good thing, because that means we finally hit a plateau and we can stop having to deal with maybe game developers just trying to push hardware higher and higher and higher. And there definitely are going to be some jerks, I don't have a better word than that, that are going to come back and retroactively try to make arguments that the ever increasing demand for bigger and better NVIDIA graphics cards to be used, ray tracing for instance, as one of the gimmicks that they pushed into video cards and video games to get you to buy more graphics cards. People are going to make an argument that manipulation to make the consumer buy things they really didn't want to buy was the only thing that was keeping NVIDIA interested in making consumer cards for as long as NVIDIA was interested in making consumer cards. Of course, now NVIDIA really isn't interested in making consumer cards. But yeah, those kinds of arguments always are ridiculous and fall flat when you start to think about it. It's just that people are saying, well, you have to pay more now so that the shops will keep on stocking the products you want, which, yeah, it's just price gouging by a different description. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about ARC 2 though, since it's not really a game yet. Let's see. The next Zelda game could be partially inspired by a recent spin-off, hence series boss Aonuma. The Legend of Zelda series will celebrate its 40th anniversary next year. Well, what would the spin-off be? It would have to be either the one where you actually play as Zelda, which almost certainly not, since that didn't actually succeed and people weren't really interested in playing that, or a Warriors, Hyrule Warriors game, and I guess it's the Hyrule Warriors game as I scroll down here and read. Although it's not really scrolling at this point, it's just moving my eyes downward. But yeah, I think it would be fairly crazy to once again take the mainline Zelda series and push it further and further away from what it has been as far as being an adventure dungeon game where you go to dungeons and you get items and those items help you beat other dungeons. All of that was tossed in Breath of the Wild for the most part, and making it an open world game. So if all of a sudden now it's an open world game where you're just beating up tons of enemies like Hyrule Warriors, that's just yet another step away from what Zelda was. Yeah. And yeah, that really sucks. Although, in fairness, I'd also say that some of the games, like Skyward Sword, kind of failed to maintain or grow Zelda also, and put it in some weird directions. Majora's Mask, certainly also a weird Zelda game. So as far as 3D mainline Zelda games, they're batting about 50-50 as far as actually feeling like a Zelda game, Ocarina of Time style game, Wind Waker style of game, which even that is not the original Zelda feel. The original Zelda games are more like Link's Awakening and Zelda 1, Zelda 2. Well, not Zelda 2. Yeah, so there's been a long history of Zelda being thrown into very different types of games. They don't have a core conceit that they really want to stick to, which is a real problem. The No More Heroes spin-off game, or the Bayonetta spin-off game, are kind of modern examples of flop games that try to take an already established character and an already established playstyle and just spin it off into something very weird. So yeah, I pretty much lost any hope for ever seeing another Ocarina of Time type game after seeing the success of Breath of the Wild, and yeah, I think they're just going to continuously go in that direction. There is clearly a desire to let a new mentality sink in at Nintendo and do things differently. And it's an oddly non-Japanese thing where usually Japanese are so much about honoring tradition that they refuse to make any changes at all. But weirdly, that's not happening here. Alright. And then our final Video Games Chronicle article today is Nintendo will offer an alternative to Switch 2's controversial game key cards, dev claims. Any claims it's now skipping game key cards thanks to a new smaller cartridge options, which was the smaller cartridge option the issue, or was it a bigger cartridge option that they needed? So, yeah. Reportedly, there's only been 64 gigabyte sized cartridges, which is kind of crazy because you could definitely get ones that are 32 gigabytes and probably 16 gigabytes as far as the size of flash chips that you could get. Which, yeah, for Nintendo Switch games, 16 gigabytes is still probably a little high. But then also, if you wanted a full installed, really pretty, really long game, I could see going up to 128 gigabytes, but I just don't know if anybody's really taking that much space up without also Yeah, here we have another one that would need to be resized. I think I left some tabs like this open and didn't bother to resize them. Like there's definitely been some projects where I have just decided not to work on it until I lock down what these live streams are going to be like going forward. I don't want to double my work, even though I'm probably doubling my work in one way or the other. Alright. Inazuma 11 Ina Dai livestream has been set for January 13th. I can't imagine that they would announce too much since the game just came out. You can see it's rated very positively. Oh, I got a bunch of the Corpse Party games. That was probably the biggest expense that I got on Steam sale. It's just all the Corpse Party games for fear that they might get delisted, and I probably won't ever play them at this rate, or if I play them I won't be able to make regular footage from it. Although they may be perfectly fine to play, actually. And then there was a DC game that had DC characters that wasn't actually published by Warner Brothers. I grabbed that because the license on that is likely going to expire in the next few years, with Warner Brothers being acquired and everything. So yeah, that was another thing I bought. I wish there was a better way to really show things, and I guess there kind of is. Let's see, if I were to do this, and then this, and then let's see if I can just use Windows key shift left. Yeah. So yeah, here's the games I bought on Steam. Might as well talk about it. Blades of Time, just an old game I've always wanted. Blasphemous. I thought about, I might do a series of just actual blasphemy type stuff, or things that would be described as blasphemy in a row. Disney games, then a sharp 180 for Corpse Party 2, Corpse Party re-release remake, Corpse Party Blood Drive, Book of Shadows, and Sweet Sacho's hysterical birthday bash. Cypher, full motion video game called The Dame is Loaded, Danganronpa Goodbye Despair, Danganronpa Ultra Despair Girls, Darksiders Genesis. Here's the DC Justice League Cosmic Chaos game, The Blob 2. I got a bundle of Quantic games, so Detroit Become Human. There's Disneyland Adventure Games, Disney game, God of War, and Spider-Man Remastered. So those are some bigger games, mostly because those were not likely to really go on sale and they didn't have any DLC. This apparently was originally a shareware game, but it cost 99 cents. Another Rethink game, the fourth Monkey Island game, Save Room, The Merchant, Shadow Man, which I wanted to play, System Shock remake. The Third Day is another blasphemous type thing, Trying 3. Wall-E, Disney game. We Know the Devil is a interesting kind of visual novel, and so yeah, that is another blasphemy thing. Now, would I be as bold as to have a series air around Easter next year? Around that? I don't know. I probably would just screw up the scheduling on that, but that would be funny to me, at least. But yeah, these are the games. So that's 4, 9, 5. Let's just count this one as new, even though it isn't new. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. 30 games, with a significant number of them being Disney games that I would never really likely play. And then only really 4 or 5 of them are big name games. So yeah, that's where I spent a couple $100. So yeah, I already have a lot of games, so it's every time there's a big sale, harder and harder to justify buying any new games, or it's harder and harder to find anything that's actually a deal. I probably, if I was much more successful as a YouTuber, would just be buying the most expensive games possible, the newest of games, the biggest and most popular games, which would really just make me like every other content creator, and I would be competing certainly as a small fish in a big pond at that point. I really hate watching this stream just to see how it looks, because it says, like right now, I have an average view duration of 3 seconds, which definitely means that somebody has just popped in and then immediately popped out. And that really sucks, because it means something's not working. Unfortunately, that is the vast majority of people. You need thousands upon thousands of views just to balance out the people who are popping in and popping out. And maybe that's the problem with YouTube Shorts. Maybe I'm actually going to hurt view duration, not help it, by having my stream dual stream to YouTube Shorts. I don't know. Anyways, the next Gematsu article was Melty Blood Type Lumia shipment and digital sales top 600,000. 100,000 units sold since June of 2024. Which, that's a fairly wide amount of area. This is a fighting game with anime characters from the Fate Night series, it looks like. At least some of them seem to be from the Fate Night series. It might be several different animes. Speaking of anime, the studio Gainax has been dissolved, and it seems like in the West, all pushes to be streaming platforms for anime are being abandoned, letting Crunchyroll just take complete control of streaming in the West, which Crunchyroll is bad enough that I think a lot of people are going to just start going back to pirating anime. And yeah, with Gainax being dissolved, I imagine they're most famous for Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I imagine those licenses aren't going to get lost or anything, but it might be more expensive or harder to get them in disc format. They did very recently announce that a new Neon Genesis Evangelion movie was going to be made, which seems weird that they would make yet another movie, but I don't know if that was really ever Gainax that was going to handle that. In fact, I'm not sure really when was the last time Gainax had anything to do with Neon Genesis Evangelion. But it is always sad news when you have a very well-known animation studio getting shut down and dissolved. A lot of the really popular, really known anime has Gainax's name on it. A lot of the anime on my shelf to the right of me now has Gynax's name on it. Yeah. And so we are entering a realm of more lost media than less lost media, which you'd think the internet would prevent things like that, and for a certain level it kind of does, but at a certain level it kind of doesn't. I also heard that a hacker group apparently was able to steal everything on Spotify, their entire catalog, and they're going to slowly put them out as torrents, which, yeah, I'm not sure if there's a great system there that, as far as just organization there, like, because I don't know how many Spotify songs you really, or songs in general, you really would want to download. The totality of it, they say, is 300 terabytes. So if you were to try and download all of it, you would need a massive amount of hard drives, and it would be by far cheaper just to maintain a subscription to Spotify for years upon years instead. Yeah. And I don't know if they really are going to be putting up podcasts per se, or if it is just going to be focused on music first and foremost. Moving on, Powerful Pro Baseball 2024 and 2025 shipments and digital sales top 1 million. I guess that's all I really have to say on that. Patapon 1+2 Replay Boss Rush Challenge Update is now available. Let's see. So far, the game is rated very positively. Yeah. I probably should have just restarted my entire Firefox browser to reload all these pages. Octopath Traveler series sales have topped 6 million. Okay. I guess this is probably a good week to put out these kinds of announcements instead of announcing new games or anything like that. Let's see. Kachi Kuta, the game, has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Let's see what this looks like. And this is one of those cases where the vertical is going to feel weird, because either I do it this way and then there's just a bunch of text or another trailer below it, or I go into full screen mode, and in full screen mode, well, let's just show what it looks like. It does that. And that probably is the smarter way to do things. I don't recognize this, but this is based off of an anime. But also I tend not to follow the newest of new animes, which there definitely is a desire to have games come out based on the newest animes as quickly as possible. Now here's the other problem though. If I go into full screen mode and make it all pretty like this, the odds of getting content ID'd goes up severely more. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to stay in this mode. Plus, when it's in full screen mode, I think my modifications as far as getting rid of suggestions may not work. I guess they do. Yeah, I have no idea what this game is though, so I have to leave it at that. Let's see. Bleach Mirrors High has been announced for iOS and Android. So it's a mobile game. Mirrors high, I have no idea what that is in reference to. Early in the Bleach series, you got the feeling that this was going to be more of a high school drama experience, but they kind of drop that very quickly. You very rarely see the main characters in their high school slash, yeah, I guess it's still high school. And really it's just a small group of friends that you see, and they play very little roles, being third level characters in particular. So yeah, I don't know what they could really do in that direction. It would almost make more sense in the Bleach series for them to have it be that they're in an alternate universe where they're in high school instead of following the main story experience. Particularly like that first season, that first arc of Bleach drastically changed. Like everything drastically changed after that first arc in Bleach, and so what it was set up as and what it eventually became is very different. Moving on, Digimon Story Time Stranger DLC additional Digimon in episode pack 2 Gakuran launches January 2026. Yeah, guess we can watch this teaser trailer. Let's see what it shows us. This too, still, as far as the vertical streaming on YouTube, is not getting the full images. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. The goal here would be to have a much better streaming in vertical and horizontal, and have a final recorded version that's even better than both of those. That is proving to be a difficult goal to actually reach. Digimon Time Stranger is rated very positively. And I will leave it at that. I don't think we have too many Gematsu articles either today. Shueisha Games and Carosoft announced Kochikami Ryo-san's Billion Yen Beat for modern consoles, the PS4, Switch, PC, iOS, and Android. Which, okay. That title needs more work. Yeah, I would assume that this is a management game of some sort. Yeah, it looks like it's a bunch of mini games and things like that. Which, yeah, don't really recognize this series, so I don't know if there's really anything I can say here. I recognize Shueisha Games, but you know, that's pretty much all I can say. It is to be announced on Steam. Yeah, boy, is it really noisy hearing my computer fan speed up. If I ever get around to actually building a new computer, a second time, not the new computer that I'm in the process of building, I may very well want to get very, very large CPU fans. That is the direction I want to go. nice silent, as silent as possible CPU fans. I don't want to go to liquid cooling. I don't think we can go to passive cooling. I don't think any of the potential new technologies that might come about are going to be ready in 10 years time. But yeah, the best you can do is 120 millimeter, 140 millimeter, whatever you can actually squeeze into a computer. It's just one big fan that can spin at variable speeds and slower overall. And I guess the new computer I'm building does have some pretty big fans in it. But yeah, quietness would be helpful. Although it would also be helpful if my computer was actually facing the right way around and the fans weren't just pointing in my direction, or if the side panels were actually on it. I don't know what this Elder Guard is all about, as to why it's opened. Yeah. And I don't know what happened there. Yeah. Elder Guard, formerly Legacy of Steel and Sorcery, launches January 21st. Right, then that would bring us to Gaming on Linux. There's Elder Guard. And here we have the Gaming on Linux articles. Linux Mint 22.3 gets a beta release with lots of new features. Okay. I can't really recommend Linux Mint at this point. Let's Luxman Moonlit Market brings Balatro inspired power-up management to strategic tile placement roguelites. Let's watch that trailer and see if I can get a better idea. There definitely were a couple of Balatro-like games I thought about getting, but I figured Vampire Survivors is the one to start with. I wanted to get Rogue Legacy 2, but it wasn't really on sale enough. Well, this has a story of some sort, so I can already tell you it has more than what Balatro has. Seems like a better level select map with branching options. Definitely has a unique art style to it. But I'm not sure I fully understand what we're actually doing. Guess you're playing items here to get some kind of score. Yeah, it's kind of going over my head as to what you're actually doing. Running a circus, I guess. That's what it seems like you're doing. Let's see. Moving on. The free and open source Settlers like Wildlands version 1.3 is out with market trading and new maps. I'll leave it at that. G Proton 10-27 brings fixes for Star Citizen, the First Descendant, and more tweaks. But yeah, wish I could actually read things correctly the first time. I don't think I'm terrible at reading, but I'm certainly not perfect at it. And I'd like to blame that on my eyesight, and maybe there's a small aspect there, but I think it is more just me not pronouncing things correctly. Metamorphosis looks like a chess-inspired game. Become the piece you capture in the chess-inspired Metamorphosis. So if you capture a piece, does that piece turn into being your color? Yes. which makes some sense. So they're puzzle games, which honestly, a puzzle game like this is probably very helpful as far as teaching movements of different pieces in chess. And chess is a fairly complicated game when you get into the details of it, so something like this could be very helpful to teaching chess, although I don't know if you really need to teach chess to kids these days, or people. And it apparently was a game I looked at in September and paid no attention to, which I'm a little surprised, but not super surprised. A horror incremental dungeon crawler called Horror Plant gets a new demo and release date. Do we want to watch this? Visually, it's not particularly impressive. I'm not sure if any dungeon crawler would ever really convince me to play it. It would definitely have to be very visually impressive. It said happy holidays to Zig, who is developing a game, and he told me that he's using this new animation software called Moho, which I hadn't heard of before. MOHO, I believe, is what it is. Looks to me like a wireframe skeletal system, something kind of like Live 2D if you were to make something that wasn't so much stretchy and bendy as Live 2D is, and Live 2D is definitely more used in anime style games, whereas Moho's animation style demo reel was wildly different. There are some times when a character's head will turn in the animation that I was starting to get a little suspicious might be AI generation filling it in, but actually it looked way too good for it to be AI generation. And then later on in the demo reel video he sent me, it showed that you're really turning the characters and making 3D models of the characters, just full 360 around the character. And then animation is through skeletal wireframing. And then I looked it up, and then apparently those skeletal frames can be imported directly into Godot, although Zig is not using Godot. I think, yeah, well, not at the moment, but I plan on eventually convincing him to go to Godot if I have any influence at all, which I probably don't. But yeah, also he's in the middle of the game, so it would be ridiculous for him to change engines in the middle of developing a game. That is a great way to ruin your development process, is to decide to change engines. You very rarely want to do that. But yeah, Moho looks interesting. I don't know if I would inherently put it above any other animation software, because I'm just not an animator, so I really just don't know. Yeah, I still don't want to put this on the fault list for myself. I know that there's lots of different softwares out there, and usually it has a lot to do with the type of animation you're doing in your animation style. A Evolution Sim Thrive hits 1.0 release, completing the microbe stage. We'll watch this trailer. I was a little afraid that Zig moving to a new animation software meant that he was going to go 100% digital from step one, and it was going to get very pixely and RPG Maker looking, where his animation style up until this point has been much more human and recognizable and unique in its design. But to me, it definitely looks like Moho is much closer to the type of animation software where you would either pencil sketch a base keyframe and scan it and then trace over that into the software, or you would have something like a Wacom tablet and you would be inputting and drawing directly digitally into the software. Yeah, he says it's going to speed up his animation quite a bit, which for his game will probably help him have more and better animation overall. I probably would never play this game, but I'm willing to put it on the follow list. I think we already watched this trailer for this Quarantine Zone last check, but apparently I didn't put it on the follow list. Yeah, you can see that. I think that this is probably that really long trailer. No, it's only 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Well, even that is fairly long. Yeah, this is the game that it's just kind of like all over the place as far as several different gameplay mechanics, so it might be cool, it might not be cool as far as what you're actually doing, because you go from scanning in survivors in a zombie apocalypse to manning a gun and shooting down waves of zombies, which is a pretty wide difference in the experience. And first person shooting with a handgun. Yep. Let's see. Heroes of Might and Magic Project F Heroes 2 version 1.1.13 has been released. There is, I suppose, a question as to whether I'd ever have actual time to play Heroes of Might and Magic 2 or 3 or any of those. I think I own some of those games, but yeah, I don't really have time for it. People generally just don't have time for it. It does strike me as another thing I could be playing on my Steam Deck. But if I am going to just start playing a lot more things on my Steam Deck, I need to stop playing things on my phone as much, and also make sure my main computer is doing something, running some kind of process. Valve released the latest stable version for Steam across desktop, Steam Deck, SteamOS. It is now 64-bit in Windows. The Linux client may not be too far behind from that. So the 32-bit version of Windows will continue receiving updates until January 1st of 2026, which is only really a week or two away from now. But yeah, they're going full 64-bit, which probably won't change too much for the Steam client, really. I mean, inherently the Steam client is mostly just Chrome, and I imagine Chromium has also dropped 32-bit support for Windows at least. Being in the 64-bit style means you could allocate a lot more RAM and use a lot bigger numbers, and so maybe you'll get a slight 5 to 10% improvement on the web browsing experience that the Steam client is mostly doing. But for the most part, I wouldn't be surprised if you actually see no difference at all in it. And yeah, that's really just Windows more pushing everything to be 64-bit instead of just having a better compatibility layer to still play 32-bit things. They have the suspicious or harassing group chat messages can be directly reported now. Element, and then like input support for Nintendo Switch 2 controllers connected via USB or GameCube adapters in Wii U mode with Rumble on Windows. That might be somewhat interesting. Some gyro tweaks. Yeah. There's now a prompt now for if you have an old Xbox controller and try and connect to it via Bluetooth that you have to update the old controllers for it to work. And they've moved where the screen reader stop talking button is. So yeah, minor tweaks, minor changes, not anything super interesting. Here we have Valve is discontinuing the last Steam Deck LCD model. Valve has done this pretty quietly, but they're just continuing the last Steam Deck LCD model now with just Steam Deck OLED remaining. There was no press announcement. We're waiting on a reply from Valve about this, and no announcement about it across anywhere else I can see. However, the official Steam Deck page now notes we are no longer producing the Steam Deck LCD 256 model. Once sold out, it will no longer be available. Originally, it just stated it in the US, but checking today again, it's now showing in the UK also. So, yeah. My speculations that they were going to be done with the LCD models to make room for either Steam machines, Steam frames, or just Steam Deck OLED models seems to have been spot on. I'm not really surprised. They may still pop up on a rare occasion of refurbs, but I wouldn't be surprised if all the refurbs are going to be sold through GameStop. If you absolutely wanted to save some money and get a Steam Deck and you couldn't get it from a private party purchase or trade or something like that, your last bet is almost certainly to get it from GameStop refurbed, if GameStop even has it refurbed. But otherwise, it's all OLED going forward, and yeah, I told at least a couple of people to get a Steam Deck now cheap. Hopefully they did get it. If they didn't, they are now going to suffer the consequences. It doesn't leave a particularly good setup. Now, if you wanted to buy a Steam machine and have a Steam Deck all in the next 12 to 24 months, you're going to either end up paying through the nose for both a Steam OLED and a Steam machine, or having to pick one or the other. And I think for many people, picking a Steam machine will make a lot more sense. Valve put a release candidate for Proton 10.0-4 with lots more Linux SteamOS game fixes. Let's see, several games here on this list you can see have been improved, and kind of a weird variety of games, as it always is. And then fixes for games that were already marked as playable. One of the things about my new settings is I'm recording in HEVC, and I don't know if my monitor even would support HDR colors, but sadly I think we really are not at the point where HDR makes any sense. It doesn't work with too many games. Windows doesn't work particularly well. Linux works even less well with HDR at the moment, and yeah. So I could probably record in HDR, but I just don't think it's worth it. But by recording things in HDC, I think I'm compressing the video a lot better, so file sizes may be smaller, upload times therefore may be shorter, so there may be a major improvement there, processing time. In this two 1080p stacked on top of each other's format, it's treating that as 4K 60 graphics, so it's gonna be a little dishonest in that case, but yeah. For recording horizontal videos, maybe there is a thought to recording at 4K 60, but I don't think I can really play, even on my new computer, games at 4K 60 and make them look pretty and have good stable frame rate. I think that is probably a pipe dream for most people, unless you have a $20,000 or $30,000 computer. So yeah, we'll probably stay at 1080p, and it will just be a much prettier 1080p on my new computer. And that would bring us to GameDeveloper.com articles, but we don't have any, and so then that's going to bring us to all the new games on Steam, which, before we do that, we've been going for how long here? Not that long, and it's already time to take a break, and let's have Yu-Gi-Oh! Play. And again, because I have only 2 monitors plugged in, it's going to be a little awkward, but I think we can do that pretty well. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. As you can see, the Magic the Gathering, no, it's not Magic the Gathering anymore. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Masters. I haven't renamed that scene in a long time. But yeah, the scene here for vertical streaming while showing Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a much rougher state than what the web peak looking at video game news is in. The background's not really centered, and there's a lot of empty space happening both at the top and the bottom. But yeah, and I checked out the stream on my phone, and within 3 seconds it told me to swipe up for the next stream. So oh no, yeah, maybe being a live stream in the YouTube Shorts actively is hurting more than it's helping. It's kind of impossible to tell since I tend not to get any views at all. But yeah, that is pretty infuriating to have them probably put tutorialization that you should swipe up and skip from one stream that's still going to another. Which, yeah, I don't know if that happens fairly often or if that only happens once, but certainly could be something I could see blaming low watch time on. Alright, now I'm still very much disappointed in the lack of sales and the lack of anything going on. Christmas every year tends to be pretty boring for me, as the world just decides to put everything on hold and do nothing at all, and then retheme anything that they are doing around the idea of Christmas. Yeah, it is kind of ridiculous that society effectively decides to stop progressing for a long amount of time. What is this? It's a button. Okay. For a second there, I thought my new monitor has a dead pixel on it. That is something certainly that was concerning me too, is that since it's been sitting around for a long time and it's already past manufacturing date warranties, if I was to open the TV and find that it was completely broken or had a bunch of dead pixels on it, I would be very disappointed and upset about that, and not really have a lot of recourse as far as what to do about it. Even getting a replacement TV that does the same thing would be a hassle. But yeah, one thing I am noticing is that I am leaning still a ton in this chair and not just sitting up straight. Like, again, I think that's probably just the cushions in the seat naturally occurring, but yeah, I do start to feel like I'm slanting at a 45-degree angle a lot of times. Some of this I think also has to do with just the leg positioning and all of that. Also, when getting out of the chair, I am eventually going to accidentally just fall over and fall headfirst into my TV. And I may just have to start using the lift function on the chair, because it is a rocket recliner. It's, I think, what they call them, where it lifts the whole old person out of the chair to help them stand up. Which, yeah, it's so low as a chair for me, that would help. Anyways, we were supposed to be talking about video game news. So all the new games on Steam. And in this case, I guess I'm not going to reload all of these pages, but I guess I kind of have to also. I'll reload the pages that I'm going to make YouTube Shorts on, and then I will swipe to the next thing, and then I'll just close the pages that I'm not going to make YouTube Shorts on by swiping down, and then we're going to just cross our fingers and hope we don't run into anything too objectionable, because the YouTube censorship thing is not going to be enabled. Which, yeah, I definitely am not anticipating too much happening here today as far as games go. I have a VR dance game. Here's a non-English language game. And I definitely have visions in my head of what I want my Violent Monkey script to do, as far as to make it look very nice, and frankly it might be a plugin worth sharing to other people instead of just keeping it for myself. But yeah, I have to actually do the work and make the code actually happen before anything else goes forward. Yeah, never really had a breakout hit as far as the past couple of years that I've tried to put more of the little projects I've done on GitHub. And for me, a breakout hit would be somebody else is actually committing code, somebody else is actually actively using it in a way that would be in any way contributing back as far as feedback or something else. Yeah. Suppose I am still watching a lot of streaming stuff. It's kind of weird because, like, to watch TV I'm facing one way, and then to do something on my computer I'm looking at a different monitor 180 degrees in the opposite direction, and that's just wasteful and silly, but it's probably the way things are going to be. But yeah, there's some stuff I've been watching, and One Punch Man is pointless to really watch, but I'm watching it. And then Spy X Family is, I guess, decent enough to watch. And then trying to still watch Ranma 1/2 every now and then. Which I was under the impression, and this might very well just be a false impression, that Ranma gets cured of his affliction as soon as he gets, like, true love's kiss or kisses someone, and that there was a whole movie about them doing Romeo and Juliet and them, Ranma, kissing the main female protagonist in that. And there was an episode around the end, I think, of the 3rd season that was a lot like that, and so now I'm wondering if either they retook that concept and redid it in a movie format, which might have happened for Ranma 1/2, or if I just saw that one episode, and in that one episode they sneakily put tape over the mouths of the characters so they don't actually kiss. But yeah, may just be that I saw that episode and thought that was something when it really isn't anything. One thing I can probably say is that there's very little chance that I would play something that's like a Survivors game I'm not sure this actually is a survivors game. After playing Vampire Survivors for even a couple hours, like I'm going to be very, very picky as far as what I would play that is in that survivors version. Another thing when I was doing my wishlist cleanup is if it's a generic visual novel, I probably should start to think about taking those off, because yeah, I just don't see a future where I am going to want to play or cover generic visual novels. Now who knows, maybe in the future somebody in my Steam family decides that they're big into visual novels, at which point then I would be able to point to, this doesn't support English, does it? A couple of them. But yeah, there's kind of a wide variety also of what visual novels somebody might like. It's effectively impossible to have a generic selection of visual novels that would appeal to everyone. I could see there being a lot of variety there. It is still shocking though that visual novels aren't slightly more popular in the West, but then I guess just reading in general I don't think is that popular. Yeah. This doesn't look enough like a game. Give this a chance. It does feel like today we'll end up finishing this stream at a reasonable time. Probably just means though that I'll be able to make some episodes of playing Vampire Survivors. That's kind of it. But need to take the trash out and simple things like that, but that is kind of it. Decided to use schedule send on my text message to send out Merry Christmas to a couple people. So as long as I don't kick the bucket between now and then, that'll go out automatically. I use schedule send when sending out texts fairly frequently when I'm in the middle of the night and I don't want to disturb people. Yeah, it doesn't really scream that there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out. I did find a lot of games that were on my wish list that were just free games, and I decided to add them to the list immediately instead of add them to my library immediately in case they are temporary free. But I imagine it's just really a case where there's just some games that were free that I was holding on to better focus on them and only download them when I was actually going to play them. So that's a bad strategy, since games do tend to disappear from Steam if they're not in your library. Very few games have disappeared from your library if you already purchased them. Gonna give this a chance. Wow. So I did run my macros pretty early this morning, so that would explain why it's been barely 2 hours and we are done with the stream, but it is also Christmas, so that would also explain things very easily. So I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, and I am just going to end this stream as it is, and we'll see what happens on Wednesday, I guess. Yeah, really is nothing more to do. So yeah, that's going to be it for the show. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment.